Here we are again, reverse redaction. My name is Judah McNeil, and I'm here with Ford Sues. We are going to reverse redact probably one of the biggest movies of the summer. Nah, I don't even think it's a probably. It'll be the biggest movie of the summer.
It could be the biggest movie of
the year,
half decade.
Of the decade. Yeah.
Half decade. I'll say half decade.
Oh, half decade.
Half decade. Maybe not a decade.
A demi-decade, if you will.
Semi.
It's different than a demodoc. Okay, so anyways, yes, Avengers Infinity War, Part 1. You should be doing the voiceover for that.
Avengers Infinity War, Part 1. I missed my time, you know. I mean, I really should have been born 20 years earlier, and then I could have, competed with Don LaFontaine and that other dude who does the comedian movie trailer. It's a little too late now. Nobody does these voiceovers in movies anymore. I mean, every movie trailer now is literally, I mean, they're still stuck in a time capsule. Every movie trailer now is literally the Inception. Like every single one.
It really is. Okay, so for Avengers Infinity War, done by those brothers?
Yeah, those dudes. The Russo brothers.
The Russo brothers, yeah. So see, these guys came on the scenes with Captain America, right?
I don't know the history. I can't keep up with all their. I mean, all I know is MCU has done a better job of retaining style and mood and theme better than anyone else, I guess.
Yeah, well, from my recollection, the Russo brothers came on with particularly they got noticed for Captain America Winter Soldier, and
we're that late. Wow.
Well, I mean that's what I'm saying for this MCU.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
I'm not sure if they did the first Captain America, but
no, it doesn't look like it.
Yeah, they bring with them a sort of they're not your typical liberal preaching director storytellers here. They bring with them sort of an interesting take. You know, they're the ones who shaped Civil War,
right,
and brought in ideas of government control, and whether or not.
Yeah, Civil War is kind of a libertarian film in a way. I mean, you could almost think of it, in a time when, I mean, you think about how odd Civil War is just politically. Like, for the past 15 years, everyone's been kind of like anti-Blackwater and anti these, what do you call them, military-industrial complex contractors, military contractors, and for all intents and purposes, Civil War is pro-military contractor. I mean, that's what it's saying. It's like, well, maybe even more than that. Like,
there's at least that voice, right? Yeah. There's that side.
Well, yeah. I mean, it isn't called Iron Man Civil War. It's called Captain America Civil War. So it sides with these vigilantes, really. Yeah. I mean, and this movie, I mean, you get about a minute of like, you need to arrest these men, and Don Cheadle's like, okay, yeah, dude, I'm on it. We'll get into spoilers in a bit, but
right. So, what was your overall take?
Yeah. So
here, with the caveat that me and you have this problem, we've admitted before that we love movies when we're watching them, and hate them after when we pick them apart later.
Yeah, and so I think I side with my cynical friends on this one. The film snob part of me, the film geek part of me, loved this movie. I mean, I loved it while I was watching. You know, the film, not film nerd, but the action movie nerd or action movie geek. You know, yeah. I loved it while I was watching it. I mean, there's some misses here and there, but in terms of entertainment value for a movie that's this dark, I can't think of another movie. I mean, Empire Strikes Back is going to be the first thing that comes to mind. Maybe Dark Knight. It's in that realm. You know, Dark Knight, maybe Two Towers, Empire Strikes Back.
Are you saying Dark Knight because the villain was just one of the best
Yes,
villains ever?
yes, and I mean, I would say Thanos is up there with Joker. I can't think of another. I mean, blockbuster movie that has a villain like this. I mean, this villain is just.
I think he beats. I think he beats Joker.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, I don't know if he beats Joker in terms of character. Well, I don't know.
I don't know. I think he does. I
He's
think
close. It's close, but I mean, it's hard. I don't know.
It's apples and oranges.
It's apples and oranges. It's true. Yeah. But in terms of like formidability,
oh man,
yeah. This is like a villain that is unstoppable, and you just don't see that in these kind of movies. You know, when the villain is unstoppable, it's like X-Men Apocalypse, and you're like, oh, well, they're gonna stop him. You just know it, but you know, watching this movie that they're not gonna stop him, and then you find yourself at moments actually rooting for Thanos. Yeah. It's just such an odd movie.
It is.
It's an odd summer blockbuster movie because, like, the whole trip up the mountain thing. I mean, honestly, I'm kind of getting chills thinking about it because that's when you read Hindu epics, they always scale a mountain and they go up and they do some sort of. They're seeking a boon from a god. I mean, this is, and when they get it, you know, they'll meditate for 1,000 years, and you know, they stand in some pose for 10,000 years or something like that, and then finally Brahma reveals himself and says, "What do you wish?" And you know, he says, I want to live forever," or whatever. You know, I want all, you know, absolute power. Blah blah blah. Yeah. So it is that sort of like hero's journey in a sense, what Thanos is doing, and then when you know it's going to happen at a certain moment, you're like, oh. Man, I was like, this is gutsy, but then, and we'll get to the spoilers in a bit, but then the film nerd, I guess the film snob part of me, once we all sat through for the credit scene, the film snob part of me was already kicking into gear. I didn't have to read anything else at that moment when at the very last shot, I'm like, okay, film snob kicks in, and I'm like,
wait, the very last shot. Oops, sorry.
Of the Easter egg, you know, the post-credit scene.
I didn't stay for that.
Okay. Well, so that post-credit scene, it may have been the nail in the coffin for me.
Ooh, I'm glad I didn't stay for it.
It may be the nail in the coffin for the MCU in the same way that Last Jedi was the nail in the coffin for Star Wars for me.
Well, we'll talk about that, especially in spoilers. How are my levels? Am I a little loud?
I think you're fine. Every now and then I think I'm getting too close. I'm getting too loud.
Oh, okay. Okay, so all in all, end credit scene and everything, what would you give the movie experience and afterthought?
Well, I mean, I think just as a movie going experience,
what about as a story?
I'd say these are two different things for me. As a movie going experience, as a summer blockbuster, I think this movie like succeeds at all its goals. It makes every party happy. I feel like it's a 5-star episode. Like Joss Whedon described Empire Strikes Back, he said it's not really a movie. Empire Strikes Back is not a movie. It's an episode because it's a cliffhanger. And so as such, it really can't be considered as a movie. And that's the same thing about this one. It's not a complete story. It's really a part. And it's a chapter.
Absolutely.
And so as an episode, not as a film, I think it's 5 stars. I mean, as a movie going experience, it's 5 stars doing what it wants to do. As an actual film, I think the problems with the film are the problems with the entire MCU, and that is the MCU is the same thing as the WWE, as the same thing as a soap opera, as the same thing as reset television and Harlequin romance novels and Naruto. It is serialized drama, and as such, it will never end. So that's my major problem with it. Just as from a storytelling perspective, it is a reinvigoration of the Greco-Roman, myths of before, and that they just go on forever. So there's this great moment in, I want to say it's the Aeneid. Yeah, it's the Aeneid. And I'm going to get the particulars of this wrong, but I think they're building a shield maybe it's for Aeneas. So the Aeneid, this Virgil's Aeneid, is basically the Roman response to the Iliad and the Odyssey, and the Homeric epics were basically, and this is unfair to say it this way, but you basically kind of cyclical view of reality. You just kind of toss your hands up into the air and say, oh well, the gods, what are you going to do about that Olympus? I mean, Zeus, he can do this, he can do that. This might makes right, baby. And the seasons continue on, and the wheel keeps on turning. I mean, you can think about, I'm going to smash the whale, Daenerys in Game of Thrones, right? Like the wheel just keeps turning, the gods do what they want, and us mortals just have to just say, take one for the team, oh well. I mean, we're always going to be taking the L. Someone's going to win, but they're going to lose next year. That's the cycle of reality in the Homeric sort of Greek version of things. But the Aeneid tells this different story. I mean, it was basically a propaganda piece for Rome, and the Aeneid talks about linearity, and it's saying, no, we're moving towards something. So on Hephaestus makes a shield for Aeneid, I'm guessing. I can't remember the particulars, but the shield shows this sort of cyclical view of reality, but Aeneas is building towards something. He's building towards Rome. He's going somewhere. He's going to make a home, and he's going to end this cycle. And so there's a linearity to it. And I think the thing about story is you have to have a linearity, or else everything just resets at the end. And oh, well, what you going to do? We're all just going to lose in the end anyway. The gods are going to win. And the gods aren't fair, and they're capricious. So that's what I feel about what the MCU is. And because they're based on comic books. And the difference is in the Greek, in old pagan culture, I mean, you're looking at seasons, and the seasons can be so unfair. Like it rained last year. It hasn't, but you go through a 10-year drought. I mean, the gods are unfair. Nature is unfair. But the reason, the reason for comic books, soap operas, and anime and WWE being capricious is because of consumption. It's because they need to keep selling stuff. So, I mean, it's in a way even more cynical. It's like, all the stakes that happen in this movie, at a certain point, there's that nagging part of you that just knows, none of this is going to stand. Like none of these stakes are real, because they're not going to sacrifice that character.
Well, but there's still the maybe, and we'll get more into that in spoiler talk.
Okay.
I felt watching it, there were a couple moments, I have to admit, there were a couple moments that took me out of it. That it was trying a little hard to. I'm not trying a little hard, but I did just staying with that whole jokey thing.
Right. Yeah. Half in the bag. They mentioned that on Red Letter Media. They mentioned that, it's for such a serious movie, to have certain quips at certain moments was, yeah. So I can see that. It didn't bother me to my knowledge, but
it only took me out for a second, but what really kept me engaged and just the power of the movie was Josh Brolin, man.
Yep.
He killed that role.
Yeah, he did.
And even the way they did the CGI of his face and everything, like there were times where I could see the CGI and I didn't even care. It's like when you're watching a cartoon and you forget you're watching a cartoon,
right?
There was so much synthesis between his presence, what you saw, and his voice, the music, his words, his presentation, his acting, and how the other characters, how the other actors were reacting to him. I was amazed. I don't know if it was Josh Brolin, a confluence of a lot of things coming together, but I was scared of Thanos, while at the same time, I kind of liked him. Like, you could really sympathize. I mean, of course, that's what we've talked about. That's what makes a good villain, is you look at his motivations and you can kind of understand where he's coming from.
Yeah, for me, in terms of villains, so a couple comparisons here. In terms of villains, For me, he's probably the best in this sort of movie since Mad Max meets Serenity. For me, I love the Operative. He's one of my all-time favorite villains, the Operative in Serenity, and then Immortan Joe in Mad Max. Like all three of these characters, you understand why they do what they do. You don't agree with them, but maybe it's possible Thanos may be the most sympathetic of all of them, at least in the way that they present it. Now, some of it, there might be a little bit of convenience if you really, if you analyze it too far. I mean, things can kind of fall apart.
Well, let's talk about
first. One other thing I did want to say in terms of CG. I mean, I can't think of another character since. I mean, the first thing I think of is Gollum Smeagol. In terms of like emotion, identification, where Circus, Gollum, and in this case Brolin, Thanos, like they feel like an entity almost. So yeah, I think they did a fantastic job. And you're right, there are moments where he does look CG, and there are other moments where he looks human almost, as much as a ballsack chin can look, I guess.
Yeah, it's weird. Like I just really buy his whole thing.
I do. Yeah, without question. I do. I mean, in a way, he's like the Grim Reaper. It's just like, hey, guys, I'm just doing my job. And even when you hear his backstory, it doesn't. A lot of times, giving too much information like that might ruin it. And that was one of the things that was so intriguing about Joker, is like his backstory is kind of made up. Like he didn't really tell in the Dark Knight version, that is.
It was mysterious.
It was mysterious. Whereas here, I mean, he actually, I don't know, he kind of peels back the curtain, lets you see, and I still, after hearing his origin story from his own lips, I'm like, oh, okay, I get you. I mean, I get it. Like, I don't.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk more about him. But would you give the movie 3 stars, 4 stars out of 5? What would you do?
Again, I kind of agree with Joss Whedon about the enshrinement of Empire Strikes Back. I mean, this is not a film. This is an episode.
Yeah.
And it's just hard to analyze it on those merits. I mean, I know what it's trying to be, but really it's a cash cow, so it's, as a as a business, man, it's good business practice, but I don't know. It's kind of, well, it's a good zero-sum business practice. I don't know if it's necessarily going to pay off. So I personally have a hard time in terms of what its goals were. I mean, I think it succeeds. Yeah, it's like a 5-star in terms of what it's trying to do. But what it's trying to do is make money. So I'm sorry, like that's really the truth of the matter here.
Yeah. And
I'm going to be vindicated. We'll talk about the, I've got my theories about what actually is going on. And yeah.
Well, see, I don't have the same kind of cynical approach. I see it as a much more complex entity. Yes, I think there are producers and movie makers involved. There's the black coats involved, the suits that are trying to make money. But I think there are also, there are some. I think that the Russo brothers are trying to do something artistically here with their message, and they're doing something different with blockbuster movies. And we can get into, we'll talk. So I give it a 4.5 out of 5. I loved it. And even when I go back and, when I reverse redact the little, things involved with the, I don't know, just these tropes, these Marvel tropes. I still think, all those just chattel, just kind of like blow off of just the main thrust of the movie was exciting. It was powerful. Everybody who asks me, I tell them it's powerful. And let's talk in spoilers why I think it was a really powerful
so
movie.
Before we go on, I didn't realize this, but the Russo brothers, they directed a lot of early Arrested Development episodes, including the pilot and Community. They directed the pilot and a lot of episodes of Community. So that says a lot about their, in terms of their understanding of directing comedy, which I think translates very well to the MCU.
Yeah.
And you know, one of the, after the bad guys said, you know, in terms of power, like you said, this movie, like now Marvel does depressing better than DC. You know, DC has made their, you know, and somehow still managed to make it fun and funny. Like, how do you make a movie with Thanos fun? And I think it is fun. I think there's lots of fun that happens in this movie.
Yeah. So let's talk spoilers. Spoilers. So on that note, I feel like the way they do that is by developing characters. So whenever these, you know, when Captain America says, you know, and he meets up with Thor, and he's like, "Oh, you grew the beard. You're doing my beard thing or whatever." You know, like it's okay.
Yeah. Okay. I got you. That one was not. Oh, okay. Yeah, I got you. Okay.
No, I mean, I know that's one of the things that took me out of the movie, but I forgave it because, I mean, these are two characters that you know, you just kind of forgive it. Like if standalone, you've never seen any other Marvel movies, like that would have been terrible, you know.
But you know, I think, you know, I mean, when you watch Band of Brothers or something like that, guys in wartime scenarios, they can't be, you know, somber the whole time, right? So I mean, they have to kind of, you know, just talk crap every now and then, you know, make fun of each other. So yeah, I think some of that stuff works. Some of it gets a little silly with maybe self-indulgent with the Guardians crew.
Star-Lord, yeah, that was the worst part for me. Take out the Guardians and you got a perfect movie.
See, I don't know, I still laughed at that stuff. I mean, I guess, yeah, it was a little much, but yeah, I still laughed at it. Drax just,
yeah, it's funny.
That guy, I think he's so good. I mean, they must teach him well in WWE, because
Dave Bautista
is just he's too much.
He's
eating those chips. When he's eating those chips, I could just take that. Like, that just is a YouTube video right there. I just watch that or whatever.
Yeah. And the movie had a lot of those moments, you know, that you just take them out as just a scene.
Oh yeah.
And it was so entertaining. Yeah. Well, so the other thing that really was hard for me to stomach was the scene where they almost get Thanos, and Star-Lord, Chris Pratt, like, stares him in the face and gets angry and has a little tantrum. Like, Star-Lord was too tantrumy the whole time.
Yeah. So here's my thought on that. Are you ready to talk real spoilers?
Yeah.
Nothing happens after that moment. That's all an act. They get the gauntlet off his hand right there, and everything is Thanos's dream sequence after that moment. So Star-Lord is that, because they can't. There's this episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation where they realize they can't beat this holographic projection of Dr. Moriarty. They make a hologram program, special, like a birthday gift for Data. You know, Data is this incredibly intelligent android. So they say, well, we need a computer program that can compete with Data. And so then the computer puts all its resources into making this Moriarty character real. And so he wants to find a way to get off the holodeck, or he's going to destroy the ship. So they basically make him think that he's gotten off the holodeck, and they put him in a little video game. It's basically like, you know, that spawns. So they've captured him, you know, isolated him on this device so that he'll never be able to get off. But from his perspective, he is off. So you know, it's the perfect con. It convinces both. So I think the last half of the movie is a con on Thanos, because they get the reality stone, and and just procedurally generate a
How
new
did they
reality.
get the reality stone?
Because he had it on his the gauntlet.
Well, but so they get the gauntlet off him. Why would they need him to be in a fake place?
Because otherwise he's too strong. He'll beat all of them
without the gauntlet.
Yeah,
he's not that strong without the gauntlet.
No, but see, why would you ever want him to be a threat again? So you like put him in a jail, and you use the reality stone to procedurally generate his dream. Because what's real weird at the end, he wakes up and he looks at the sunrise, and something feels off about it to me. So
he feels off. Yeah,
Yeah,
you can tell
something
he's like,
feels
yeah,
off. And
uh-huh.
so I think that that's all an act because they realize like when Strange does the little, looks at the 6 million possibilities,
Hmm.
I think he realizes we need to trick Thanos. We are not going to beat him through power. We're not going to beat him through any other means. So that they were trying to get that off, but they realized even if they got it off, he had some other trick up his sleeve. So they needed to get it off, go back in time, 30 seconds, which they could do, and then um, give an alternate reality in which Star-Lord gets mad, which would make sense to Thanos.
Yeah.
Oh, so they're all acting at that point. And then everything that happens after that is in Thanos' imagination. That's the only solution to me that makes any sense because they're not, Spider-Man's not dead, dude.
Well,
I mean,
yeah, of course, but
Spider-Man and Black Panther, they can't kill Black Panther after Black Panther made that much money.
well, it's
And
interesting. They kill all the ones that nobody expected to kill. So yeah,
right. Yeah. I mean,
and they
everyone
keep alive.
expected Iron Man to die. And this is one of the things Red Letter Meter, Half the Bag, they bring up is one of the cool things about Thanos as a villain is he truly is random. Like he actually spares people. Like normally in these movies, like, you have the villain sit there and give his soliloquy and the good guys get ready and they plan their, thing. But here, like Thanos just leaves people alive because he knows they can't do anything.
Yeah,
Like
he's a lot like Country for Old Men.
yes,
Like I
yes,
have.
that's a very good analogy. Like so when he leaves Stark, like there's this sort of honor thing that he has for some of these characters where he actually respects them. He's like,
Yeah,
he says it to Starlight, I like you, you know.
I hope they
And,
remember you. Yeah.
yeah, it's not personal for him. He's not like doing this out of some. It's just he's just thinking about the long term play here. I mean, he's the god death basically. So
Well, so what do you think about his theology, his philosophy? Like, so he's not exactly the Grim Reaper. Because he's not taking people that are, he has a theology. He has a view of the world, right? He has a philosophy. He has a worldview that of balance that I'm not quite sure I totally get. I don't know why taking half of humanity, killing half of humanity brings balance, but he believes that.
right.
Did you get that? Did you understand?
Well, yeah, I did. I mean, I think his backstory makes that pretty clear. Someone posted this on Twitter. I saw, and I just thought this was pretty fantastic analysis. It's like everyone is a conservative in their own field, and if you think about that for a second, that is absolutely true. If you go to Hollywood and try to change anything, everyone in Hollywood is a conservative in their own field. Hollywood is like Downton Abbey. You're above the line. They literally use, okay, in Downton Abbey, you have upstairs, downstairs. The people that are upstairs are the aristocratic class. The people that are downstairs are the servant class. And in Hollywood, you actually have the terms above the line and below the line. And if you're above the line, you're basically a peer. You've gotten your knighthood. You've gotten your approval from the queen or whatever. And if you're below the line, you have no creative decisions whatsoever. You are literally an automaton. You are a machine. There's no creativity below the line. They say you do this, you do this. It's like the military. So they are extremely conservative in the way that they produce their content. And it's like a feudal system. It's like taking a time machine back 200 years. And I know in the corporate world, you have like people to report to and stuff like that, but it's not to the same degree. It's not to the same degree at all. And
Thanos.
So in terms of, oh yeah, I'm sorry. Why did I bring that up? But conservatives. So what a conservative will do is say, well, we have to conserve our resources because they're finite. And so, someone in Hollywood's going to conserve the resource because it's finite. This is the way it's worked before. And so someone who is conservative in that sense does not see the possibilities of evolving a new system. And so the irony is we're all conservative in that sense. I mean, every human being is in some way or another is conservative in that sense, that we believe that reality is a zero-sum game. We're all playing a part in the prisoner's dilemma, and there's only so many resources to go around. So you have to fight for your own. So and this creates a lot of these sorts of social structures. So
Okay,
Thanos,
yes, that's right. So if you take away half, then
there's enough resources for everyone to go around. You're not going to have famine. You're not going to have, all this other stuff, and you're not going to have the excess that results in decadence, and other sort of social malaise, people's boredom and things like that cause people to do stupid things. So yeah, he's that kind of conservative, but it's not necessarily a moral conservative. He's not necessarily a it's just more of, we're trying to conserve resources here, and there's a finite amount of resources, too many mouths to feed, so we have to make some hard decisions. So I mean, he's just a utilitarian in that sense. I think Red Letter Media kind of brought up, just as a joke, it's like, well, if you had these stones, why don't you just make more resources? Yeah. Why do you have to use it to just destroy stuff? Like, okay, hey guys, here's like when he changes Star-Lord's gun to bubble gun, like it literally becomes a bubble gun. Mm-hmm. So why don't you just turn that into some more wheat? Like, oh, okay, we're just going to double. Hey, here's 10 more planets, Earth. Like, I mean, if you can do it that way, mm-hmm. why destroy? Why not just build new stuff? So that is kind of like, if you analyze it too much, it kind of can seem to fall apart at a certain point.
Except that with the idea of excess, though, like just transforming, like just E equals MC squared, making, new things, more food. I don't think that would help, like it would keep people from starving. But right. Like, if you think about, like, I do kind of like the aspect of simplicity,
right?
You just take half away, boom. You take something out of the scene. Like, if you transform all the guns into food, so you have more food, people get fatter, like I think you brought up that idea of like the excess and
right. Well, I mean, you look at like Wall-E, you look at Wall-E, like the humans mm-hmm. become these walking, talking babies, basically, because, they've got this high fructose corn syrup, pumped into their mouth at every waking moment. They don't have to even move for themselves. And yeah, I mean, that's part of being human, is having a limitation. So, I mean, yeah, again, it does make him much more sympathetic when you understand where he's coming from. And other movies have had villains like this. I mean, one of the, surprisingly, the one that always comes up to my head when I think about these sort of questions is Ghost Protocol, Mission Impossible. The villain in that movie is, Cruise describes him as a believer, or one of the characters. He's a true believer, and he believes in basically starting this nuclear war to thin the population out and to start over, because we've gone too far. We've taken it too far. We need to go back to, and that's taking this.
It's real accelerationism.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I would say he thinks. Yeah, I don't even know if he would call it acceleration. Because he's not trying to use the system. He's just trying to blow everything up so that we have to go back to ground zero. But his reason is, he's ruthless in that. Like, he would do it for himself. Like, he would die for that.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that is an interesting villain, someone who believes that there is no fixing the system. We just need to, burn it all down. Which is different than Joker. I mean, there's something more. There's more animosity in Joker, whereas like the Ghost Protocol villain is more of a he's a principle. He's good. Yeah, there's a principle operating, and the same thing with Thanos. There's a principle operating, and I want these people to be able to wake up and look at the sun and have a good life, not just a adversarial life, fighting over resources.
Did you buy into his love for what's her name, the green girl?
Yeah, I did.
I did too, but I didn't know why. Like, there was nothing in the other movies that sort of built up to this, and I think it was just purely his acting that sold me on his love for her. Well, being attacked here. You know what I mean? Like,
yep.
The actual narrative didn't really make sense. Like, he loved her because okay, he adopted her and he raised her as his own.
Again, because I think you see him, the way they try to show him is that he's not just a god of death. He's actually a being, you know. I mean, he's not a human being, but he's an alien being that had lived a normal life for all intents and purposes, you know, some time ago. And I mean, it's very analogous. I mean, when you read some of these Hindu stories, some of these god figures, these sages, I mean, they started off as people, and then they, not all of them, but I mean, some of them, they did have a finite beginning, and they grew to this place of power through their meditation and through their introspection and through their, they call it tapas, you know, like putting stuff off. And through that sacrifice, they ended up getting to a place of, you know, ultimate power, or close there. So, I mean, Thanos is kind of like that. And what I think they did a good job of was showing that he was trying to live the ideal life and had a hard job. Like, so his balance in the universe thing is not his mission. It's like his job, you know, it's just his day job. In the meantime, he's going to try to be like, you get the sense that he doesn't have like he's not some puritanical like hater of sin, or puritanical hater of desire, I guess you'd say. You know, he's not like a monk. He understands why people celebrate life. Like, in his mind, he's thinning things out to make things flourish. Like, he's burning the forest so that more life can sprout. So he doesn't have anything against life. He has stuff against life that chokes out other life, I guess is the way to look at it. And so he embraces that father, like, and so I think from his perspective, he was the best father he could be as a, you know, intergalactic ruler, you know, like he wasn't different than Odin's backstory. You know, Odin was, you know, trying to conquest was his goal. You know, Star-Lord's dad, conquest was his goal. Whereas Thanos's goal is to make life better for people, better for little kids, in his mind. Yeah. So, I mean, I think he sees that girl with compassion, you know.
That's a good way of looking at it. And he was just purely, it's just this powerful, practical approach to life.
Yep.
Now, if your theory is right, and I think you are right, what does that mean for the next movie?
So this is, I am kind of curious. I say I'm done with the MCU. I'm sure I will watch the next one just out of curiosity. And, you know, they're going to win again. I don't think I'll watch the next, I don't know, the next feeder movie in between the two, which the end credit scene. So spoiler.
Yeah.
In credit scene is Nick Fury. Another reason why none of this is real. Nick Fury and his, what's her name? His,
his underling.
Yeah. What's her Hancock? I don't know, whatever her name is. So they're driving along and things start crashing everywhere because it's basically the rapture, the reverse rapture. So, so, you know, everyone's cars are crashing and stuff like that. I didn't think of that until just now. This is Left Behind 3. Someone needs it. That Kirk Cameron's here. Don't worry, ladies and gentlemen. Left Behind 3, Tribulation Force. So anyways, so they stop the car, and then Howell, Hancock, Hubert, she starts dusting away, and then Nick Fury is like, "Oh, what's going on?" He's like, "Whoa!" Oh, and he starts to shake, and so he pulls out this pager-looking thing and sends a message, and he's like, "Mother," and he disappears. But he sent the message out in time, and apparently the icon on the message that he sent to is Captain Marvel, so it's setting up the next movie. So
I forgot they're going to introduce Captain Marvel, but okay, but how does that jive with your? Wait, so if none of that is real. He really didn't.
Yeah, so that is a problem there. So I'm thinking it has something to do with someone there. I did read one little blurb because I looked that up. I didn't know what the symbol was. So someone had suggested that his little pager thing that he sends, because it looks kind of odd, may have been a time. It may have been able to travel through time, his message.
Okay. So yeah, so my mind, your theory sounds dead on. I was trying to figure out how, and it makes much more sense for that scene I hated, but I don't understand, like, that makes the next movie terrible, like I
Well,
don't
that's what I'm
know.
saying. If they can write themselves out of this corner, I mean, they're in a sense they're legends because I mean they are in lost territory here. Like trying to write themselves out of this one without it being purgatory or a dream. This they're gonna have a hard time doing that. So if they can find a way to do that, then I'll stand corrected. Like if they can find a way to satisfy me, then I will this movie will be bumped in my estimation, and it will be Empire Strikes Back worthy because Whedon said it was just an episode, but I found satisfaction in the original trilogy for Star Wars. Like I'm not one of those people who didn't like Return. I liked all three movies, and I thought they worked as a cohesive story. So I mean, there's still the jury's out. I mean, this could be a trilogy, if you can even call it that, that actually works.
A trilogy, so like all the other movies, this one and the next one.
Right. Well, I mean, in terms of Avengers, there's only been two.
Oh,
But I mean, not that you can really call it. I mean, because Captain America: Civil War was an Avengers movie for all intents and purposes. So yeah, I don't really know. Like, so if they can pull it off, then I'll stand corrected. But I just can't. I don't see how they can. That I can only see them Lindelofing their way into a Deus Ex Machina here, and I think the Deus Ex Machina is Doctor Strange. I think he has some trick up his sleeve.
well,
There's
yeah.
something we're not seeing. There's something that happened off screen. My gut is it's between Strange and Tony.
I think it has the potential to be really clever because what I kept thinking about, and I'm sure the Rousseau brothers were thinking about, was how Doctor Strange got out of the last pickle he was in with
Yeah,
a world-eating god.
which worked for me. I really loved that. I loved that showdown. Like,
I was trying to think, how could you take that concept of making, so it was basically using natural law of whatever that law was, of whatever that magic or whatever, like how could you take that? So I don't know enough about the stones and the gauntlet, but there's got to be something where he uses, so it's, using your theory, there must be something here where so maybe I don't know, like what kind of reality is it? Is it just an illusion, because like you said, remember the gun turned into a bubble, so the reality stone, like what kind of reality did it create
right, yeah.
for Thanos? Because it's more than a hallucination,
Right.
So it could be some kind of thing where the two realities come together.
See, yeah, that's a good point. Like maybe if you have the entire gauntlet and think that the gauntlet is really a creation of Thanos. And so we're tending to think of the stones as all powerful, but we don't know if there isn't another stone. There's some things that the myth that as it is established, it doesn't necessarily, I mean, he made the gauntlet. There wasn't a gauntlet that pre-existed from time immemorial,
And the stones seem to have their own volition too. It's something to think about,
Right.
like the what was it? The soul stone demanded a certain thing from him, right?
Yep. And then the other thing, yeah, like when you were saying that you got this multiverse thing that kind of runs in all the sci-fi and comic book world. So, I mean, it's quite possible they could jump back and forth between the verses in a way. So maybe we're looking at one strand, because the reality stone creates its own reality, but it's not necessarily the only one.
I think this is the first movie that's introducing what do they call there's the one continuity they call Marvel 61, I don't know, it's like a number.
Oh, right. Yeah, I'd heard about all that stuff, but I don't really know.
So there's so many, they have to stick, there's only one this canon, or
right.
this the real timeline.
Right.
So I think they may be introducing for the first time in the movies a separate but real reality.
Right. And in terms of reboot saga, you look at how Star Trek did it. There was, and I think it was the final Star Trek Next Generation episode, All Good Things, because when they're doing that, they have this vortex that's spanning 3 time periods. And so, or maybe I'm thinking of a different one. But yeah, in this one, they have to send a shuttle in to close up this rift because all these other enterprises are popping up. And so one of the enterprises has this, roguish looking, almost caveman looking Will Riker. And he starts shooting at the shuttle because he understands what's going to happen. And he was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Well, in our time period, the Klingons are winning everything. If you send that back, we'll have to go back and die." So from his perspective, like he wants to stop this thing from happening, because so yeah, I kind of and then Star Trek utilized that with the whole reboot. Basically, we're on an alternate timeline because Vulcan was destroyed in the reboot, Chris Pine versions of Star Trek.
Right.
So
right.
I totally could see how MCU could take that sort of, all kinds of new storytelling opportunities in an alternate reality.
Yeah, and so it'll be interesting to see because I think your theory is valid, but except that I don't think it's an illusion. I think the stones are more powerful than just creating an illusion for Thanos, and maybe it gets out of control for them. Like, what do they do with the gauntlet now?
Right. Yeah.
Do they just destroy it if they have it? Maybe because in the comics
there's Warlock, there's other characters involved in this whole thing, right?
Well, what I was thinking is Iron Man gets touched, like he gets bad. He goes bad. And what if he puts the gauntlet on and he feels the power?
Oh,
and they have to stop him, and then they need Thanos. I don't know. Could be something like that.
Right.
They could go a lot of directions.
Yeah, I would say, I haven't read the source material, so I looked at, the Wikipedia, just kind of like brush up and see what was different about Thanos. And I have to say, I prefer the way they've done it in the movie. In the comic books, it's basically about him all trying to get this girl, basically. I mean, it's a goddess death or something like that, and trying to impress her.
I thought that's what they were going to go, because I thought they were going to make, remember, I think we talked about this in Thor, like that they were going to resurrect Thor's sister or whatever, the goddess.
Right.
Lady Death. But they didn't. And I really appreciate that they didn't go in the romance. Like his love was for his daughter. Something a lot more substantial there,
Right. Yeah.
Well, it'll be interesting to see where they go.
Right.
But on the topic of, big blockbusters, so to kind of close us out, like, what does it mean to you if they do a good job in the second one? Like, what does it mean if, you're saying you're giving up on Marvel? Like, what does it mean if big corporations, big Hollywood does something right?
I think it's more of, at this point, a matter of time. We just don't have much time. And so the better that they get, in a way, it's like, if they do it, even if they pull it off, it's like, I mean, we could just spend our entire existence 16 hours a day watching good content. It's like they've cracked the code, in terms of serialized drama. Like, I think the MCU may be the pinnacle of serialized reset drama, because that's what it's become. I mean, it's a reset. I mean, ever since Iron Man, they've been churning out, almost like a factory, really well done blockbusters. And if we continue to accede to their pleasing stories as good as they can be and as much as can be mined from them, I think we lose. You know, like,
how so?
so,
Explain that. What do you mean?
well, I mean, I just think there are other stories that could be told. And okay, for the same week, I listened to, and this is not, RTs do not equal endorsements, but I listened to a podcast about the My Lai massacre. It's the guy tends to, I mean, he seems like alt-right. He almost seems, there's things that he says on Twitter that are just not something I'd want to be associated with, I guess. But in terms of this podcast analyzing this My Lai massacre in Vietnam, it's totally like just puts you on this weird, like, oh, like you understand why hippies hated Vietnam so much. And this guy's coming more from a military background, looking at it from that sense. And I have not had a more moving experience in terms of thinking about American politics or American war since Grave of the Fireflies. So this white dude telling a story in podcast form, 2-hour story about the My Lai massacre, I mean, it reduced me to tears. I just sat and I was in the Panera Bread parking lot, just like, I mean, what do you do with this information? I mean, it's just so, when you hear what these people did, it's just so savage. And you try to put, even thinking like, how could you do this? Would you be, if you were in the military at this time, in this situation, when you hear everything set up, I think those kind of mental exercises are more conducive to the problems that we face as global citizens, because we are global citizens, whether we want to pretend like we're not. They're going to be more analogous to future problems than thinking about infinity stones. So, I mean, we just have only, it's like Sherlock says, and this is my hard drive, and I've only got so much room. I can't fill it with a bunch of petty nonsense. I've got to keep my brain clean, And I just think at a certain point, like, if we're not careful, there's just too many fandoms. There's just too many things that we can argue about in a theoretical sense, and we could be using our brains to solve problems. Like, I've heard a lot of people say, okay, like, we've talked about the internet, and heard a lot of people say, oh, just learn JavaScript, or learn Node.js, learn this new framework, learn this, blah, blah, blah. Today, I just found out there is someone on Twitter named Diana Smith. Cyan Harlow is her handle. I'll share this link with you. So she made using entirely just CSS and HTML, no JavaScript. She made this painting, and I think it's I don't know if it's an actual Renaissance painting or something she just reduplicated, but you can go through yourself. There's even an Easter egg. You can actually delete a part in if you look at it with the inspect thing in Google, you can go through and change a part of it and see an Easter egg. And just to prove, because when you first look at it, like, oh, there's no way. This is not just HTML and CSS. And it is. It is ridiculous. So I think there are things that can be done that nobody's thinking that can be done with our storytelling, with our art, with our communication, with the internet, that we are blissfully overlooking because we have microwave epic. You push a button and you've got the Greek gods on screen, and you can walk out and talk about it for a while and go about your business. I think there's something. It's just like cheap catharsis. We have a lot of cheap catharsis and a lot of pop philosophy and psychology that is shielding us from deeper questions, and questions that actually are going to be easier to apply to our own lives.
So if Marvel is a success, I think what I hear you saying, and I resonate with it, it'll hurt me more to divorce myself from it. But the thing is, I think that what keeps us coming back isn't that that they're so good. I think it's just that, you know, it's criticizing them. I actually think if they get really good, if they crack the code, it'll help me sort of just let the masses, you know, like if they finally if they crack the code and they get into this groove, I don't know. It feels to me like the bigger they get, the better they get, the easier it is for me to find, you know, to turn away. It's actually, it's a weird relationship. You know, maybe it's the cynical side of me that you know, the part of me that still obsesses about Lost, you know,
Right.
is not that they did everything really well. It's the fact that they didn't do it very well that draws me to it. You
Mm.
know, it's the part of me that wants to connect the dots, that wants to solve the puzzle, you know? And maybe that could be the thing that's drawing me away from my own creation, my own creativity, is trying to fix their creativity. And if they get it right, if they make it shiny and new and perfect and yay, everybody likes it, then maybe I can do my own thing.
Right. Yeah. But the problem is, it's not just Marvel, though, is it? And, you know, I mean, at this point, Disney owns everything. And, you know, so even if Marvel gets it right, Star Wars won't. And even if Star Wars gets it right, then, you know, the Netflix version of Marvel won't, DC won't. So it's just, just because one, just because one polytheistic narrative works doesn't mean another one won't. So it's like, you know, we are spoiled for choice of 1,000 different narratives and 100,000 different characters. And at a certain point, like, I feel like, yeah, make your own myth, right? Like, that's what we keep talking about. It's, I would like to make something that is more accessible, not zero sum. You know, for all the talk, and I see a real lag in Hollywood and a real lag in the creative community about this, and music and film, and the internet. I see a real lag in terms of they really value heroes that don't believe in a zero sum world, but the methods by which we tell these stories are zero sum. And by what I mean by that is zero sum. They're not redistributing their own wealth to the poor in Compton. You know, like, oh, well, this is going to be our, we're going to dedicate this movie to blah, 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 to a restoration project in, you know, some part of LA. You know, like, they all talk this big game, but they still believe in zero sum as long as they have the biggest portion of the sum. You know, so their stories tell this thing about, oh yeah, you know, blah, but it's contradictory in the way that it was made. You know, I mean, my biggest example of this is James Cameron's Avatar. Like, oh yeah, you know, I mean, we just need to get back to nature, and here is the most technologically advanced movie of all time. Let's get back to nature, guys. Oh, and I'm gonna make 4 more of these movies. Let's go back to nature. Okay, dude. So I just, it's do as I say, but not as I do. And, you know, it's just a bunch of people talking about communism where they're the most hyper greedy, crony capitalists ever. Like, oh, and you can't copy this stuff. This is mine. I own it. I don't believe in property rights except when it's talking about air. Ideas that I copied from 1,000 other people. Hey, guys, I work at Disney. We own the Day of the Dead now. We invented it. Nope, that didn't come from Mexico. That actually happened, by the way. They actually copyrighted the Day of the Dead.
Really?
Oh, they got sued their butts off. It was a bad PR nightmare, so they let it go. They realized it. But that's what these corporate entities do. These capitalist, quote unquote, capitalist thing. Like, oh yeah, you know, we totally owned Cinderella. Yeah, Pinocchio. We own those. No one else can touch them. We created them. We went back through time and created them, so nobody else can touch them. Don't touch our Mickey Mouse. So I mean,
that's why I think if the more money they make, the more they get it right. I think the bigger they get, I think they'll eat themselves.
Yeah, I think you're right. Success breeds mediocrity at a certain point. I think at a certain point, it just gets too lumbering to with it. So, and this is why I think our best option for overthrowing the Death Star of entertainment is actually not going in a strafing run. It's just going and building our own stuff in another universe where the Death Star is not useful. You know, like just Oh, okay. Well, yeah, you have a Death Star in the Star Wars universe. Guess what? I built this other universe. Can't touch it. A remix universe. You look at what's happened with remix culture and DJ culture and rap, hip hop. I mean, so much of the sampling culture is really truly a middle finger to this notion of intellectual property. And
most of what's been popular on YouTube is a remixing.
Yeah. So I think, what I'm trying to figure out is maybe a way to you do it almost like Ernest Cline did in Ready Player One. Like I feel like he couldn't have gotten copyright permission to write about this stuff, right? I mean, it's like if you write about referencing Spider-Man, you don't have to, if it's in a book, you don't have to get permission, right? Like I don't
know.
Think so. I mean, how could one dude get all the permission rights for all that crap? But I think there are ways.
Fairly unknown dude too. I mean, it's not
right. So I feel like there are ways you could reference a lot of this stuff through analogy without actually violating copyright, but everyone knows what you're talking about. Kind of like Dante did in the Divine Comedy. He referenced all kinds of historical figures, political people, and it ended up being this, cultural touchstone of a moment. Ready Player One is not Dante's the Divine Comedy. But I think there's room for that kind of thing where you just have somebody who just plays fast and loose with intellectual property in a way that everyone knows what's going on, and without permission, and crafts a new myth. And so I guess that's my goal is to find a way to do that over the course next, that's I guess the 10-year goal, and to really emphasize more the story, because a lot of this stuff, a lot of our favorite movies and TV shows, they're born from the tiniest of things, Memento came from a little short story, and I want to say it was like Maxim or something like that, one of these men's magazines. So then there's a lot of things that really start off as a germ of an idea. I was talking to, we talked about this with Legend of Zelda, how it started out. I kind of think of the original Legend of Zelda almost as a storyboard for Breath of the Wild. Yeah. And I was talking with my buddy Cole. He does this Movie Town Movie Club. He does reviews every week, movie reviews. And we both kind of had the same feeling about Infinity War. And he was saying that you look at some of these earlier movies, Sergio Leone, when you look at his first in the dollar, I can't remember that Clint Eastwood, the very first one that Sergio Leone did with Clint Eastwood, it doesn't really hold up in terms of production design. It looks cheap, but it sowed the seeds of these characters that later, became iconic, and they did it on a budget. And so really, in a way, the first one was more of a proof of concept. It was a pilot, so to speak. You look at the first Mad Max, really, it is in a way a proof of concept, because that movie does not hold up the original Mel Gibson one. It just doesn't hold up. But when you see that and see what it would become later on, you understand, oh, okay, now I get where he was going. But that was the best he could do on the budget that he had. Legend of Zelda was the best that Miyamoto could do with the technology on hand at the time.
Well, yeah, and it's strange to me, not strange. I think what I've seen is that the entertainment industry has taken these these concepts. Let's just say concepts, right? Mm-hmm. These beautiful concepts, and draw. That's what really caught people's attention early on to Hollywood. Is these awesome concepts, and people didn't really care about what they look like as much. You look back now, it looks terrible. And instead of developing that, it feels like Hollywood and just entertainment industry in general, you talk about games, really focused on the visual piece of it, like making it look really good, and the concept, the story, whatever, it makes sense,
right?
And so they lost. So these proof of concepts lost the concept because they developed the visual aspect of it. So
and I think that we're underestimating our capability, because so my daughter's addicted to The Office. She's going back and mainlining the entire thing, and so I've never watched The Office, and so
you've never seen The Office?
No, it's just not my thing, man. It's just Michael drives me nuts, and I don't like the show, but I do understand why people like it. Especially after watching last night's episode with her, there was a moment where Michael brings Dwight and Jim, and they're doing a cold call training, like, you know, they're training. And that scene is just so great. I mean, you could have that. You do not even need to have any setup to that scene. That can be a standalone YouTube video. Brilliantly written. It's hilarious. I mean, that is like it's timeless comedy. You know, it's like Laurel and Hardy, but I mean, just extremely witty. And you just lose yourself in this. And all the characters lose, except Jim, lose themselves in this moment. And it's just great. I mean, it's just class clown taken to this ultimate level. Yeah. It's fantastic little bit. And that's a great standalone thing. And I think what we do is in the we keep talking about the Christmas Cathedral. I keep trying to come up with, and you know, every day I'm trying to like a new, let's see, what is my latest definition? Let's see. Here's the new title for the book for the one day will be written. Consumer Bliss, the commodification of culture to enslave and energize a willing mass of consumers. So the idea being that if you can receive without work, bliss or release or fun or relaxation or probing the depths of the consciousness of God for 3 seconds. Okay, that's good enough. Then you don't need to do the work, you know? And so, we keep making the mistake of saying this is a capitalism versus communism thing. We don't live in that. We live in Brave New World, in which it's a consumer society. Planned obsolescence is the name of the game. Disposable, quick, fleeting moments of pleasure and analysis. It's a currency culture, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think if we can pull ourselves, the Matrix analogy is good, I feel like, in that sense. We just pull ourselves off to quit consuming and taking all the sensory overload, and because it's getting better and better. Like like for years, comic book movies were not good, and then Iron Man hit the scene, and I look at Iron Man. What they've done well is they've recaptured Stan Lee's Excelsior sorts of sensibility, this plucky sort of Spider-Man in the face of hell, and it's almost irrefutable. I mean, it's working all over the world. Everyone loves this sort of plucky determinism in the face of hell, and it's impossible to argue with. But at a certain point, you just got to stop arguing and unplug. And I'm going to tell my own story. And the reason we have Star Wars is because Lucas unplugged from Flash Gordon. Yeah. And
well, don't call them plucky because they don't know what that means. Do you remember that? No, that's okay. Anyway, so that was from Infinity War.
There's so many jokes in that movie. Yeah.
Something I'd like to end with, as we go forward into our own creativity, is like, I think the one thing we have that came to me as I was thinking about and talking about the movie is that these movies, I think too often we hope that they satisfy something in us that can't be satisfied, that they're going to tell us something about life that'll cure us of all our or of our immediate problems, that will give us something. And so even as as creators, whatever we create, and I think it's important to be creators, no matter what we're doing, we have to remember that we're not Thanos. We're not trying to make everybody happy.
Right. Yeah.
We're not trying to make everything right. That is not what we're trying to do. We're just trying to reflect something and maybe pass, a value on, a virtue on that we've learned or that we're struggling with, and I think the more Marvel, the more Disney tries to solve people's problems, tries to make people's lives better, by cracking the code of cinema industry, the more people will realize that was really good, but I still got problems when I come out of the theater.
Right. Well, and I think too, the other thing for me, man, I don't know. It is such a difficult thing for me to figure out, because on the one hand, I get why. I mean, because I still have the film, the film geek inside of me, the nerd, I guess, that that understands why other people. So I resonate with people when people are talking about it. I want to, oh, it's something to talk about with people I might not otherwise talk about stuff with. And, if you could find ways to leverage this into something more meaningful, I guess that would be the best way to do it. It's like, go out and watch these movies with people you may not otherwise hang out with, and grab dinner afterwards and talk about life, So I think that there's ways to, it's not like it's going away. I don't think necessarily a boycott is the answer. But I do think we just need to be more circumspect with our time and because there are just too many easy answers, too many easy things. I've noticed this as a creator. When I come up with an idea, people are like all the potential pitfalls are the first thing to come up in anybody's mind. Oh yeah, you're not gonna be able to get this, you're not gonna be able to do that, you're not gonna be able to do this. And how many people like this Diana Smith who did this painting in HTML CSS? How many people said, oh well, you'll never be able to do that, you can't do that in CS? Everyone would say, oh, HTML is useless, why are you even using that? I don't know, man. You gotta go get a framework. Oh, why don't you just use Wix? Oh man, why just paint it in Photoshop and throw it up there on Wix? Why would you need to do that? So yeah. If everyone had that mentality, like the Nintendo was an inferior piece of equipment, and it's just, I love Nintendo's whole sensibility, especially early on, in terms of the Nintendo was an ugly box. Sega comes along looking all sexy, with this cool hip hedgehog. Nintendo, this is the Nintendo killer. And then Nintendo comes out with Kirby's Dream Land. I guess I can't remember if Rare helped out with that one or not. I can't remember who did, but Kirby's Dream, the very first Kirby, whichever one that was. And the final boss on that has this parallax scrolling with and transparency even, which is things that they said that 8-bit couldn't do. Nintendo, Super Mario Brothers, when you go back and look at like their efficiency, like they used the pattern for the mushrooms is the same pattern as the hills in the background of they wasted nothing. And necessity is the mother of invention. Back when the Hays Code was in play in Hollywood, you couldn't cuss, you couldn't show certain things. There's no nudity. So this challenged people with a more libertine sensibility to find ways to be creative in suggesting things, and that oftentimes actually helps creativity. I think the limitation creates the creativity, and so that's what is so inspiring to me about that HTML CSS painting there, and it should inspire us when all we have is a phone. Like, well, you know what? All you need is a phone to shoot that office scene between Dwight, Michael, and Jim. That's all you need.
Yeah.
You just need some time, sit around a table, come up with a good, sketch.
A concept.
Yeah, just let's get characters here. Because why do we like Jim, Dwight, and Michael? Because they're characters. Why do we like Thanos? Because he's a character. You don't need a budget for a character. Right. I've got Adobe Creative Cloud. They've got this character animator thing, and it can use your webcam for you to animate this character. Like you can motion capture basically without a green screen, without anything. And you could draw your own character. It takes a lot of work because you gotta set the nodes, properly or whatever. Oh well, I actually did this one a long time ago. Anyways, but I'd forgotten about it because again, we get carried along by this stuff. We have tools at our disposal to make stuff that's kind of interesting, but they're not as sexy as what Marvel or DC can bring. Marvel or sorry, not DC. Screw DC. Marvel or Disney can bring. So make your own myth. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Like we can do it. We can do it.
Yeah.
It's cheap. Ideas are cheap. And we got this thing called the internet. Like it didn't cost that lady anything other than time. And probably, she probably just like, let me not tell anybody to do this because everybody's going to say it's not possible. Oh, well, it's possible.
Well, let me leave you. Like we got to wrap this up. But a quote that's really helped me this week. Scott Adams, creator of Dilbert.
Right.
One of my brother's prophets. I've started watching some of his videos. He says, one of our biggest mind prisons is believing that history repeats itself. He says, once you break out of that, once you believe that history does not repeat itself,
there you go. Yep.
Then there's endless possibilities.
Right.
You know?
And that's the whole crux of Thanos's thing. Well, this happened in my society, therefore it's going to happen everywhere else. So, like, why not think outside the box and make a new myth, Thanos? You know,
exactly.
It's not a zero-sum game. Like, it doesn't have to be.
You can be creative, and it's one of the lures of liberalism to me is, hey, we don't have to conserve. We can be creative. We can help people, without cutting out, we don't have to cut out, we don't have to cut. We can create our way out of this.
Right.
But, I don't think that works on but I do think that helps me, because when I heard him say that, there was something in me that says, hey, whoa, nothing's new under the sun. But there is something beautiful about the idea, because then when I started thinking about it, I think there is a lot of my life that I limit myself because I believe I've seen it one way, and I just believe that history repeats itself. And so I can't do that. There's no way I can do that.
Especially if you got hurt, and that again goes back to that Thanos thing. If you've fallen down and you saw the writing on the wall and you knew how that was going to go down and nobody listened to you, then you do get into that history repeats itself mode. And you're just like, oh, well, this is the best we could do. And so you're just trying to mitigate damage at that point. And I think, by our whole surfing violinist motto is to keep it creative, cross-cultural, constructive. I believe that there is a future that doesn't have to be zero sum. And I've stumbled across these things, in my history, whether it be, Linux, open source software that you can get for free instead of having, if you don't have access to the money for Premiere or Adobe, like you have some, well, not Premiere, but Photoshop or Audition, you can get these free things to give you a step towards the future. So there are people who believe in non-zero sum. And, I think those people have helped me stumble my way to where I am today. And I think there's a future there that is non-zero sum. I mean, that is, yeah.
Yeah. So on that note, dude, get to work. There's a lot to build, and
make your own myth. Oh,
history doesn't repeat itself, is I was going to add.
Yeah, that's good. No, I like that. Yeah, let's add that. But by the end, this is going to be like surfing violinists. We're going to have 100 things that we say, and we're not going to remember, 90% of them, or it'll take us a minute and a half to say them all. Yeah.
All right, brother.
All right.